We'll give it just another minute to allow a few more people to join. Let's see. My name is Lauren Canterbury. I'm the Director of Marketing Operations here at RoxStart AI. We'll be joined here shortly by Mike Riggs, who is the president of RoxStart. Before we dive in, just to give a little bit of time for people to join, I wanted to invite everyone to drop in the chat where they're calling in from today. Miami. That is awesome. Orangeburg, South Carolina. Oh, wow. Atlanta, hey, that's our home base. Ooh, Charlotte, very close. Kansas City, Chicago. Another Chicago. I've got people from all over. Houston. A lot of transportation businesses in Houston. Atlanta. Nice. And it looks like Mike is joining. Oh, we even have someone from Germany. Welcome. So now we can do proper introduction. Today we are joined by, or I am joined by our president, Mike Riggs. Thank you for joining today. We can go ahead and get started. Mike, would you like to say a quick hello as we welcome these folks in?
Yeah, we're very grateful for anybody that's taken the time to take a look at this opportunity, and hope that we can answer whatever questions you have during this. And of course, we'll be available for follow-up one-on-ones as appropriate. So I'm Mike Riggs, the president of RoxStart AI Logistics, and I look forward to hopefully giving you whatever answers you're looking for. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. We've have a really great turnout today, so thank you everyone for joining. Before we start, the team, we're watching the chat, so drop your questions in anytime, and we'll get you answers and we'll get through as many answers as we can at the end. This should run about 45 minutes, and we'll close with the live Q&A, and we'll definitely touch on how you can invest. So let's go ahead and get started. So, Mike, I'll turn it over to you. I know you've spent 40 years in the trucking industry. You didn't need to go build software company, but just wondering, why have you?
Sure. After working for multiple decades in trucking, I think we've experienced every kind of problem there can potentially be in the world of trucking and transportation. We've done brokerages, we've done dedicated carriers, we've done long haul, short haul. And the one thing that's pretty clear is that the small companies are at a significant disadvantage to the larger people. The JB Hunts, the Swift Transportations can invest significantly in technology for things like route optimizations, backhauls. If you're a small owner operator and you have one or two trucks, can't really do that. So what got me excited about this is the Agentic AI actually gives us an ability to help those people on really the most cost-effective means possible. And our dream is really simple. We'll make every small trucking company and every owner-operator technologically as capable as the largest companies in the industry. And so we like to start by saying this slide, over 99% of the carriers in this industry are actually pretty small, 100 trucks or less. And my more preferred mention is if you ask what percentage of this 580,000 company market, what percentage are 10 trucks or fewer, you might be shocked to find out it's about 90%. So you have 500,000 potential customers that are 10 trucks or fewer, or onesie twosies. About half of that 500,000 are onesie twosies. These are people that don't have IT departments. They don't have the budget to try to go into technology. So our view is that we're going to unify all of them and put them into this national network and bring them to the state of the art on all of the above, everything you can possibly need to run the business with, but use it with agentic AI. The market is obviously hundreds of thousands of customers, thousands of dollars per month. You can do the math yourself. So we're pretty excited about the upside. The idea here is simple. We want to have enterprise grade logistics built for the small guys, the lean teams, and operators who keep the freight moving. If you have not yet had a chance to see the video from our CEO, Katie Helton, I really strongly advise you to watch it. If necessary, we can run it. It's only a few minutes at the end of this. But she answers the question, why? And I think the punchline is there are hundreds of thousands of small trucking companies out there that are potential customers. And believe it or not, hundreds of thousands of onesie, twosie owner operator companies out there that just don't have the budget or the technological ability or this IT staff to try to make all of these platform modules, I call them, work. If they join our network, they'll get them all. And the magic of this slide, and it took even me months to understand how significant this is, but the morph toward agentic AI is huge. We're not talking about another ERP system or another Excel spreadsheet that still takes the human beings to do it. Whether you're doing customer service, whether you're doing backhauls, whether you're doing dispatch, or whether you're ultimately doing your own financial reporting and tax accounting, the AI actually does the work. Agentic AI literally replaces the need for humans. So you've got two choices. You can grow and not add, or you can do the work much more efficiently, or you can cut people. That'll be up to each individual. But what it means for the small companies is that they can do everything as good as the biggest trucking companies in the planet. And the United States thinks of itself as a technological leader. Remember, there's only a handful percentage-wise of those companies that are bigger than 100 trucks. And there's 90% of them that are smaller than 10 trucks. And there's at least a couple 100,000 that are just 1-2 trucks, the owner operators. So this ability to do it all not only does it cheaper, but it does it where you can have all of the services. Let's go to the next slide, please.
So, Mike, this made something happen that made all of this urgent for every freight broker in the country. Can you walk us through that?
Yeah, on this slide, we talk about a market of 27,000 instead of the 580,000. The 580,000, to avoid confusion, are the trucking companies, the owner operators, the large companies, the middle-sized companies, the small trucking companies. But there are about 27,000 what we call freight brokers out in the market as well. And there was recently a Supreme Court decision, Montgomery versus Carib, where a large logistics broker called C.H. Robinson took it all the way to the Supreme Court. For decades, brokers were not liable for accidents because they were exempt. Someone challenged that proposition, and as a result, the C.H. Robinson, which had brokered through another trucking company and had an accident, they wound up getting sued. And there was this tremendous decision. It was like $600 million against C.H. Robinson, who doesn't own a truck and did everything in their mind properly to kind of vet that carrier, but they still wound up being liable. So there's a tremendous need in this broker niche, we call the smaller niche, to actually have something that doesn't, everybody thinks they vet the carriers, everybody thinks they're doing it right, but it's very different going out and being in front of a judge, in front of a jury. You have to prove it. We've built a product called RoxVault that gives the compliance and the documentation so that if a broker's trucking company that he brokers through has an accident, we can help that broker show the court they have done everything humanly possible. And as an example, you could have a load that you brokered and it doesn't actually ship for 2 weeks. Excuse me. you can now have this AI automatically recheck all of the boxes 2 weeks from now, right before it takes off. And you prove it in a way that has evidence in front of a jury trial. So it's a tremendous product. And for us, the timing couldn't be better. And again, it's not the largest market. It's 27,000 brokers. To be honest, it's $150 a month. It's not a giant revenue stream, but it's the way into these brokers so that they can also look at what we call the full platform. And it's also a way through those brokers into the hundreds of thousands of carriers out there as they demand that those carriers have those same kind of tools to be able to justify that they're properly vetted before they go out. Accidents will happen in trucking, they just will. So this is all about making sure that you can prove you did everything possible. Not that you did everything possible, it's an important distinction, but you can prove that you did everything possible in an evidentiary way. And RoxVault is that. So that product goes live next month. We've already had brokers calling us, asking us to be what I'll call beta test sites. We've already vetted it. And from my perspective, this is the toe in the water to get us to where not only are we working on the brokers, but because those brokers work with those hundreds of thousands of carriers out there, a way to get the brokers to say, hey, we need you guys to also look at this RoxVault. And then, by the way, while you're doing that, there is another complete suite of services that this RoxStart AI is going to have. And it might be customer service, it might be central dispatch, it might be the equivalent of a handheld device that can tell him if you took a load from Atlanta to Miami, you can come back. There's a route through Jacksonville, there's a route through Orlando, there's a route through Tampa. Which is the best route? What makes the most money? How do you lock it in? How you do this all automatically so that you're not wasting your time, missing opportunities. We have the ability to do all this and do it all with AI. So we'll call that the full platform. And the great thing is you can just keep seeing more and more pieces that can come as a part of that package, which drives up the revenue to over $1,000 a customer a month. And then the math starts getting really exciting. Let's go to the next slide, please.
Yeah, let's talk about the market size. How big is this market really?
Yeah, the broker market, it sounds like a relatively small market at 27,000, but it's a very stable market, and the 27,000 freight brokers are now fairly desperate for something like the RoxVault because for 30 years they've never had to worry about being sued, and now they can be. But that's the stepping stone into the much bigger market, which is the freight carrier market. And again, we can go after 99% of that market, which is what I'll call 100 trucks or less. But my personal expectation is that we're really going to focus on the 90% of that market because that's 10 trucks or less. That's onesie twosie. There's no chance these guys are going to be able to develop all that themselves. So what's magic about this is if you start looking at the math at $1,000 a customer per month, and you have even a 5% market share, you're really talking about 15,000 customers. And these are the kinds of gross margins that are going to make you pretty proud of 50% kind of margins. So I believe we have a chance to grow to 50% market share over time, which makes this $1 billion enterprise any way you look at it. But we're trying to be conservative in our ramp up phase. We've got to start getting the customers. September is going to be our acid test. But I expect by 2027 that we'll be going after this market on the right side, Lauren, which is the 584,000 times the 99% or times the 90%. It's still over 500,000 potential customers. And I still think our best audience are going to be those guys that are onesie twosies or under 10 trucks because they just don't really have a lot of alternatives to get all of the above for such a low price and have it actually do the work so they don't need bodies to go with it. So it's a tremendous market.
So, Mike, what separates RoxStart is the tech that is proven. You ran this Agentic AI through real logistics company inside your own businesses and had real success. So can you tell us a little bit about those numbers?
Yeah, I think probably anyone that's decided to attend this webinar has a pretty good idea that AI is real. But I think I'll call it about half of the population probably assumes that AI is really more for ChatGPT and looking up baseball scores. And, there's certainly that part of AI. What's stunning to me is that it actually works. So when we got this idea to see what modules could be something that could help other companies, we wanted to prove it and test it in-house. So we just took one module, just one, and we used the AI to help us with pricing, because in moving vehicles, which was part of this, I'll call it auto transport market, sometimes these people wanted it moved in a week. Sometimes they wanted it moved tomorrow. Sometimes they want it 2 months from now. But they always expect you to lock in the price. And if you're going to keep customers, you have to honor that price. But depending on capacity and depending on what's available at the time, pricing goes all over the place. So the company had for years struggled, I'll call it, with somewhere between $100,000 and $300,000 of EBITDA, 300,000 in a good year. Once we implemented this AI for the pricing model, it not only was more cost effective and took fewer people to do it, it was faster, so it did it real time. But the more it did, the better it learned and the higher the confidence in that ultimate pricing, so that we wound up watching this business go from 300,000 to 1.1 million. And this year we're on track to do over 2 million of EBIT. And it's a stunning reality to me that this AI model can even help small companies, because one of the biggest problems in the small freight world is not having the ability to assess pricing. There's a lot of customers, there's a lot of shippers that have what they call target pricing. And unfortunately, there's been a practice that we assume that, well, if it's target price, it must be close. Well, there's a lot of factors about that. Are you going to have a backhaul? Is it out or out miles from where you are? What's the load factor? There's so many things that go into this. You can actually get business and go broke because you're doing it at below cost. Or like it was in auto transport, where you thought you had the right price for that month, but it turns out a month from now, things changed. And so we like to think of this as proving that an AI module actually works. And this was the first one we've done. And because the parent company, Sakayam Holdings, owns Sherpa, we wanted to actually have these results before we'd go out, so we could talk like a trucking company that's developing it from what works for us, instead of some programming group in India or something that had an idea that might work in transportation. We like to think that it's just built by a real transport and logistics company, us.
Awesome. So how does that become return for all the people in this webinar, potentially?
Yeah, to me, if I'm on the other end of this webinar, this is probably what literally we'll call the money slides. This is what I think is going to separate us from anybody else out there. We have 3 essential markets out here. One is this RoxVault product that's more of a documentation and evidentiary, something to kind of protect you if you wind up in court. But we also have what I'll call this package of other services that are everything you could possibly want to actually run the business, but doing it with AI. We've done a very conservative plan here. Just to put it in perspective, using this model, we're only 0.1% market share by 2028, despite being cheaper, despite having proven technology, despite having had multiple prototypes that showed that this could be something good for 500,000 carriers, and put at least half of them in a more competitive way than the biggest trucking companies like JP on out there. We've tried to look at this. What happens if all we do over the next few years is tackle these 3 markets and we get 0.1% market share? It's still $20 million. Now, if you go back one slide, if I could just add that, because I think that's just the punchline. It's easy to miss this in this projection. You see the 21 million, and there's people out there saying, oh, ho hum, it's 21 million in revenue. So what? That's at 50% margins. So that means you created within the next 2 years a company that's doing $10 million of free cash flow, pre-tax cash after all expenses. That's a stunning number to me. And that's the advantage of AI as a RoxStart side. There's obvious operational advantages from the user side. And obviously, there's also the lower cost because the AI, as an agentic AI, is actually doing the work. But if I were on the other side of this webinar, this would be the most important slide to me. In a 1/10 of 1% market share, you're doing almost $11 million of free cash flow. And you just don't find too many businesses like that. Now, what's exciting is if you go to the next slide, which you already did, sorry. If we ever got to 10% market share, this is a $1 billion company. It's, again, I want to repeat that. There's 500,000 customers out there that are 10 trucks or fewer. Half of that half is onesie twosie. So there's no other place they can go to get something like this at this low cost that will make this much of a difference. Just think if you're an independent truck driver out there and you now have the advantage of technology in your handheld, but it also addresses pricing, your profit and trip. It tells you which of those 3 trips to take back. It does 24-hour customer service for you because there's a customer service module. It does dispatch for you. It connects to your customers. It tells you, well, no, you don't want that because the pricing is too bad. Pass on this one. It's below cost. They don't have anything like this. So is it reasonable that we could get up to 50,000, which is 10% market share? And if you are, then this business is $1 billion business and it's still at 50% margins. So again, for me, the break even is such a low number, a few $1 million of revenue. But even at 21 million, you're creating much more value than we've set the value with this offering at. If we're successful and it takes off like the rocket ship we hope, then this thing should be $1 billion company and it still should make these kind of 50% margins. And now you're talking about a business that's worth $10 billion. So that's what's got us excited. Got to do it. There's always a chance that it doesn't work. Don't want to lie to anybody. We have not brought on customers. We just tried it in-house. We do have customers and we do have potential customers that are validating the savings. The reason we're raising the money up front is we want to accelerate the technology to make sure we're first to market with this concept and we get first mover advantage. But this is the reason why. The scope of the opportunity is massive. This is not a loss leader business that you run for 4 years and then hope that you break even like some of the ones that were in the SPACs and other things. We're thinking this thing is going to be positive cash flow in 2027. And depending on how successful we are, it's going to be an amazing value. So let's go to the next slide.
So who else is doing this and why is this space open?
Yeah, it won't take very long for people to do the work. I don't think you'll find anybody that's putting together a package like we are to try to solve everything. Most people tend to think, I want a project, and they're thinking like a software as a service company. You need a project that's $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, like an ERP program. You need 3 to 6 months. That's what they've done for 30 years. Those days are dead. The Claude programming kind of capability means that you now can do this and you can do it much cheaper. So there are people out there that, for example, have focused on doing nothing but route optimization. There are people out there that focused on doing nothing but bill of lading. There are people that have focused on nothing but using AI to audit freight bills because, believe it or not, some customers cheat and they don't pay enough and they don't take the discounts. So there are various pieces out there. And frankly, one of the reasons we're also trying to raise the money is we think that there are some of these smart companies out there that are only taking one little piece, but we might want to consider them as acquisitions strategically to align with us so that we can add it to our platform as well. And we always had the ability, and we've got a couple, I don't know that we can discuss them because of NDAs, but we've got a couple of people that we're talking about just partnering with. We'll be the one that brings the customers. We'll take 20% of the revenue. They do all the costs. They do the work. And we'll keep adding to this. But as you look at this, and we're happy to have you get a copy of this slide deck, have access to it anytime you want, you'll find some of these other people but you won't find people that are trying to just basically completely revolutionize the business. They're trying to find businesses where they can have a specific niche. And if they're charging a lot of money, they're going after the big companies. And we just think that's a mistake. We think that the biggest advantage we have is that we're focusing on those small guys. My preference, again, 10 trucks or fewer. There's one organization out there that has 150,000 owner operators, onesie, twosie trucks. Just one organization has 150,000. And there's several apps that have like a 90% penetration rate. Again, no one's doing what we're doing now, and that's the reason we're doing the investment. We want to accelerate the technology and get this on the road by January of 2027. Go ahead.
So, I wanted to touch on something, two things. One, I just happened to see it in the chat. Somebody asked a question about how we're protecting carriers against fraud and, identity or and freight theft. I didn't know if you wanted to just give an opportunity to touch on the carrier piece of the Rox Vault that we are building and how that's going to help prevent fraud. And if it's too new, that's okay. But it's something that we are developing, and I didn't know if you wanted to touch on that.
That is an intelligent and excellent question. And the best answer is that we're actually trying to partner with real live companies, trucking companies, to say, what has happened to you in the past? What can we do? We have some ideas on how we're going to do that, to document it, to build it. For example, the hours of service with drivers has been an honor system for a long time. And if you're a company and find out that your driver has not been honoring that, you typically find it out when you're in trouble. And that's not good news, because they're going to blame it on you. We have this system that can say, no, we're going to shut it down. We're going to tell him he's out of hours. And that's the kind of technology where if you were trying to do that with human beings, you'd have to add so many bodies, it wouldn't be worth the risk. It might be necessary to protect yourself in the event of an accident, but basically what most companies do is just hope and pray they don't have an accident. What we're trying to do is let the AI tell us, no. You got to check these boxes before you go. Whether you're a carrier, whether you're a driver, we want to see the insurance, we want to see the safety rating, we want to know that you're within hours. And if you can't prove it, you go into the red zone and you're not allowed to drive. Now, again, the customer may choose to say it's too restrictive. They're not a fit for us. And that's why we're not assuming we're getting 100% market share. But after the $600 million judgment against C.H. Robinson, my expectation is a whole lot of people, carriers and brokers, and even owner-operator drivers, are going to be a lot more concerned about liability than ever. So it's good timing for us to come in. And by the way, doesn't it feel good that we're actually trying to solve this for real? We're not doing it for some phony reason to, just blow smoke. We're actually trying to build a system that makes it safer. I've got 6 grandkids and 2 of them are out driving on the highways. I want these truckers to be safe. I think we all do. AI can help, and it can do it in a way that's affordable, so there's no punishment for the carriers and the drivers that use it, because it's not going to cost them $10,000 or $20,000 a month. So I'm really excited, and I think you put your finger on a good point here, Lauren. One of the things that's great about this is we're building this as a trucking company. We are certainly trying to fix everything and anything that go wrong with us. We are building it as a broker so that we can fix anything and everything that goes along with us. But we want to partner with carriers that can say, hey, I don't know if you've thought about this, but why don't we both evolve this way? The barriers to entry are shattered now, because I don't care how big your software as a service platform is or TMS system is, it's obsolete now thanks to the world of AI, and you can just do it better, cheaper, faster, and with more safety. And that's where we're going to have to evolve. So I can't claim that we've done everything, but the things you see on the left here, the litigation ready audit report, the time stamped record, even things like carrier status, and making sure that we've simultaneously looked at the pricing. It's just almost a standard thing for a lot of smaller companies to take a backhaul because they pay in 36 or 48 hours. You say, well, why would that matter? Well, they might think they have to make payroll on Friday. They assume it's a decent rate. They don't have time to vet it. So they just say, okay, I'll go pick up the load. We think that we can, with AI, say, oh, no, my goodness, that's going to cost you money this week, and at least let them know. They might decide they still need the cash and take it, but they might also say, well, I didn't know that. I'd rather go over here and do this one, and I'll get paid in 5 days, but I'll make money. They don't have that technology to do that. Now, the big guys, the JB Hunts do, but not these little guys. So we can take this all the way. And by the way, there's also automated voice agents so that they can take calls and effectively have their own customer service department. One of my favorite stories of a brokerage was that they had a hot load that was going to shut a plant down if they didn't get it by 9 a.m. And at 4 a.m., he broke down. Stuff happens is all I can say. So he called in, but the customer service department had 10 calls ahead of it. So they didn't even get to him till 9:30. So the customer was already angry by the time the customer service rep got to it. With the new AI, you can answer 100 calls a minute, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And it's not like some robo message anymore. These are intelligent, growing smarter every time they have an issue. And they'll call and wake you up out of bed saying you got to get out of this if they can't handle it themselves. So even the customer service is going to change the world for this. And again, all this, the more people we put in this network, the more we have, the smarter the AI gets, the better the service is, the lower the cost is. It really is almost an inevitable thing that somebody's going to do something like this, and we intend to be the first.
So one thing I want to touch on, Mike, what we've seen coming through, we've been getting a lot of outside validation through news outlets. Did you want to share anything about some of the press release or articles we've been in?
I do. And again, I know people sometimes think that we build the ads and so we sort of drive some of the answers. But I think the flood of questions related to, is this technology near term? Is this something I can be using by next month? Or can I be a beta test site? I think we've just been almost overwhelmed with the feedback, Lauren, to answer your question. There's no question that there's a tremendous demand. I think, to be blunt, the biggest issue for us is strictly that we're just not technologically ready yet. Each one of these modules is going to take time. Each one of them we're going to have outside help to implement. And the parent company's been funding everything up to this point. We think if we raise some minimal amount here, that we can turn this on pretty quickly. And I think for every webinar participant here, you also need to know that right now, the way we're offering this to incentivize people to invest in what I call round one, this is essentially first out money or preferred shares. So let's say this business is worth $15 million and we've raised 10. The 10 has to go back to these round one investors before anybody else gets a nickel. So the business is really only worth 5 million. Now, for us, that means that at some point, we're going to probably stop offering this round one advantage because it's first out preferred money. It literally comes out of the equity value before anybody else gets a nickel. But because we're in the startup phase, it was discussed with our investment banker that it's probably a more attractive piece of paper to know that it actually is first out money. So it's a good valuation for sure. And I think at some point they have a right to convert it. They can talk to the investment banker about that if they want. But the magic of this deal for sure right now is that the deal is what I'll call preferred equity. So before any of the rest of the shareholders get one nickel, we have to give this money back. That's how confident we are in the value of this. But it also means we're not going to keep this out there very long. At some point, we'll convert to either regular or we'll be self-funding and we won't need outside investment. And why would you want to dilute if you see this kind of upside?
Do you want to go?
Somebody's asking a question there, Lauren. So
Sorry. So sorry about that.
Okay, so again, the target raise is 15 million, but we want to be upfront and clear. If we raise 5 fairly quickly or 10, we may just decide at that point, let's put it on pause. That's enough to get us started. One of the advantages of having this much cash is that, and you can go to the uses of proceeds too. Not only does it help us in terms of the technology and getting that technology going, and you can see there the use of proceeds is very much to build this data infrastructure, get the kind of access to pricing data that you can get across the industry so the AI hits the ground running for each customer. But we also have a sizable chunk in going after customers. It's one thing to say you've got 2 or 3 customers coming on. It's another to say that you have, an expectation of 10,000 customers or 50,000 customers. And that's certainly going to be our goal. And as long as we have this breakout where the majority of the money is for marketing and for the development of the technology and the platform and data infrastructure, there's a very small amount for working capital and running the place. And that's one of the reasons that I think it's going to be able to make these huge margins. But it will accelerate it. So instead of talking about some kind of revenue growth in 2028, 2029, depending on how much we raise, we could be accelerating this into 2027 ahead of plan.
So let's go back
I
to,
know that you said you wanted this to be 45 minutes and then ask questions. So I'm sorry. I'm very passionate about this. I love this business model more than anything, and I've been doing this for 40 years. I've been in every kind of trucking company and broker company you could imagine. I've been on the board of the American Trucking Association, including the executive committee. I've worked with the people like Swift Transportation. I've worked with auto haulers. I've worked with dry van haulers, flatbed haulers. I know this industry as well as anyone, and I've never seen a business model that has this tremendous upside, this margin, and at the same time, you feel like you're doing a good thing. So one more time, I'll put a plug in. If you have not watched the CEO video from Katie, it'll really cement that we're doing a good thing here. You can be proud of this investment. It's not just going to be a good return for you, possibly a fantastic return, but it's also doing a good thing. Sometimes it's nice to know that in the world of business too.
awesome. Hey, did you, real quick, let's touch on how we plan to reach and to build our subscriber base.
Lauren, you're head of marketing. Please feel free to take
Here,
this.
I can take this one.
You're the
Okay, thank
genius
you.
on this. So this is great.
I guess a few, Mike touched on this earlier. There are trade associations that exist where we are, we have already started conversations with, and as these tools become available, our plan is to engage with the trade associations like Freight Brokers of America, TIA, and so on, and and use them to help, if it's a product we believe in, we hope they'll believe in it too and market that to their, to their, all of the carriers or brokers or owner operators who are in that trade organization, to help get the word out. We're also doing we're attending trade conferences, and obviously we're in the press. I'm sure you saw some, may have come to us through social media. We are doing podcasts, so many avenues to get the word out, what we're doing here. It is really exciting, and the passion behind it goes I think everyone on the team really is passionate about what we're doing and helping small trucking companies, carriers, and brokers really compete against some of and have the tools to be more competitive in this very competitive industry. So that's my little piece. Thank you, Mike.
Well, let's go to I think that's sort of the
That's
final.
it. Yeah, you touched it on it
There
all.
is information on the website on how to invest. Again, the people at Manhattan Street Capital can assist, or we can try to assist. This is a Reg D process, so it has to be an accredited investor. There's a legal definition of that. This is not Reg A where people can write $500 checks. This is meant to be for sophisticated investors, and that's the only way we would want to do it. And I just wanted to be upfront with everybody. There is probably a clock ticking on this because the closer we get to the actual customers starting to come in with these kind of margins, the closer we are to self-funding. You don't really want to raise money and dilute yourself at that point. You certainly don't want to raise it with what I call preferred stock or first out money. But we're going to commit through at least August, possibly through September, that we're going to give this everything we got. And hopefully, we'll start self-funding after that. But I think it's time. I don't know how long you allowed for this thing, but if it was an hour, we should probably at least try to see if you have any specific questions, Jose or Lauren, that you'd like us to answer.
Yeah, and I did see a question come through. The link, we'll be adding it to the chat to Manhattan Street Capital, but to view the offering page, to make an investment, you would go to manhattanstreetcapital.com/RoxStart-AI. I'll go ahead and post that in the chat now. Oh, there you go. Jose beat me to it. Thank you. So that is in the chat. Let's get to all the questions that we have. I guess, let's see. So you keep saying proven. Be specific. What did the AI actually change at Sherpa, and how do you know it was the AI and not the market?
Well, it's a great question. The reason we are 100% confident that it's the AI is that they had been doing this for years, and the revenue didn't change that much. It did grow a little bit, but it didn't grow to the point where it was 4 times the revenue. This was a pure margin pickup. But to get specific, you can actually track the profitability of each trip once it's completed. And the AI models, it didn't take 2-3 months for us to start seeing results. But because we were developing our own data, it did take more of a year before we started hitting on 8 cylinders. The AI, and it would be that same thing if we started in a regular, let's call it a flatbed market. There's certain data we can buy and we hope to jumpstart it. But we might even consider telling customers that we might give them a month or 2 free just to help build the database from theirs so that we can make sure that we are using the AI to predict the cost versus the price. But from our perspective, we didn't change anything else in the Sherpa model. What we did was change the way we priced, and using this AI tool, it got smarter and smarter and smarter. So instead of us finding a third of our loads were break even or worse, we went from, maybe as much as a third of ours turning out to be not only disappointing, but negative, to having like 5% of our loads that were problematic. And I think now it's probably even a lower number than that. It's just a few percentage points. So if you build a target margin and you're hitting it, then you can also predict. So we didn't double, triple, or quadruple revenue levels. We might have had 25% growth in revenue, because the other nice thing is we're able to offer things like a price guarantee because we actually know what we're doing now. And there turns out more customers will come along if you know that you're going to guarantee the pricing instead of making it an estimate, which was more the norm because the cost and availability were so erratic. So we'd be more than happy to give somebody a walkthrough of that in a separate call. But I can say with complete confidence that almost quadrupling of margin is 100% based on the AI. Good question, though.
Yeah. Let's see. The Supreme Court ruling helps RoxVault, but couldn't a dozen other competitors build the same compliance tool now?
There are at least 50 competitors out there that claim that they're doing safety. I think the mistake most of them are making is they've had a business model for years, so they have that position, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. and it's worked in their minds. Well, it really didn't work. For 30 years, there were no lawsuits against brokers. So the frequency of having to prove that you properly vetted something was none, zero. Now, with the $600 million verdict, the risk is basically an enterprise risk. These people are sincerely worried about enterprise risk. And if someone was doing this safety vets program a year ago, they sure weren't doing it with AI, because a lot of the Claude technology and things are only available in the last 3 to 6 months. So they are more likely to try. They're invested in their old technology, let's put it that way. Now, are there some new starts that come along and have, I'll call it similar ideas and similar pricing? I'm sure they're going to be. What I think makes us different is I haven't found anybody that is wanting to do something that is the comprehensive package. They want to do laser beam focuses. And and by the way, as I said earlier, we have in our projections a 0.1% market share. So it's not like we're not assuming there could be some competition. My expectation, though, is if it takes off like I expect, that we're going to be the Microsoft of this industry. And it is something that will become the standard. You would want to join the RoxStart network, period, if you have less than 10 trucks. And if you're an owner operator, you're an idiot if you don't do it. So I think we have sort of a global product, not just one specific thing. But any of the big competitors that have been out there doing it, they're not changing anything. They're just doing it the same way they have. And by the way, we've used them in the past. So that's not that they're bad companies, but they've never been tested. And a great example is that 2 weeks. You can do a vetting for somebody and do everything you can. And that's the way small broker, think about it. You got a company with 5 or 6 people in the office. So you're vetting all these carriers. You're checking on their, safety record. You're checking on they got to have a certain level of insurance. You can think about the manual things you can do. Some of them are available. And then you have this firm out here that says, I'll help you validate that. We've been doing that forever. So that's nothing new. The difference is all those people assumed they were already doing the right thing, just like C.H. Robinson did. You can imagine a multi-billion-dollar company like C.H. Robinson. They pretty much assumed they had done everything right when they're vetting a carrier. Completely different when it comes to proving it. And so from our standpoint, I think anybody that's a competitor, if they're older than 3 months, my bet is they're not using AI technology. They're using the same old stuff. And I'll take them on anytime. Cost-wise, performance-wise. I call it the Pepsi challenge. We'll take the Pepsi challenge with any of these guys.
So we do have quite a few more questions that are coming in. We'll try our best to get through them. We have a question: how can this help international freight?
We got to be honest and good with the bad. I think that's a 2028 problem. We have so much opportunity. You saw the model. If we get to 10% market share, this is $1 billion company doing 500 million of cash flow. I can't right now think about crossing the border into Canada or going into Europe, but I will say that we do, as a parent company, have transactions with Central America, with West Africa, with Europe. So we do believe it'll ultimately come around, but you don't want to try to be all things to all people. You want to laser your focus where there's the greatest upside. And we have a ready-made audience right here in the United States of 500,000 carriers that are smaller than 10 trucks and owner operators with 1 or 2 trucks, about 50-50 mix. And we're just silly if we don't go after that first. But I think it's a great strategy question. And secondly, depending on how much we raise, there may actually be people that we can partner with or acquire that take the international. But again, my expectation, just in full honesty, is that may be a 2028 initiative because we've got so much going here. Can you go back to that one slide that showed the 10% market share? Because I don't want to make light of the international. It's a really solid strategy question. That was it. Back one more slide. Yeah, no,
There we go.
10% market share. It's a $1 billion company doing hundreds of millions of cash free flow. I don't know how long it'll take. I don't know the capital. We're going to have people prepay. Think about this as a business. Any of you who run a business know working capital always comes back to haunt you. It won't with us because we're going to charge them before they use the service. We're going to be funded in advance. So the faster we grow, the faster the cash builds. So it's more of a bottleneck in terms of how long it takes to onboard people. We're trying to do as much, and I think Katie and Brantley are geniuses for doing this, but they're trying to build as much of this that makes it almost like app-like, easy to implement. But you think about it, if you're going to do somebody's billing, you're going to do their taxes, those are the kinds of products that might evolve over time. That might take weeks to onboard. And so you're going to have some kind of funnel. You can only take on so many. But again, depending on how much capital we raise, there are people that can help us onboard it so that we can do some temporary funding of staff. But again, this is the reason for me to think about the US only. I've never seen a market that needs this as much, where the cost is so low. There are competitors out there, yes, but they're certainly not thinking about what we're thinking about. They're all trying to get hundreds of thousands from big companies, and we're going just the opposite. We're trying to get the little guy, and we might have a little guy that only pays $200 a month, but he doesn't use that many transactions. He only moves 2 loads a week. He just doesn't use that many tokens. He doesn't cost as much. So we still make 50% on him. It's just that we've got to have a balancing act here. So that's why we're not focused on international, but it's a great strategy, good question. And if we can raise enough where we can start thinking about joint ventures or acquisitions to do international, we'll certainly do it, but we'll have to divide and conquer because we don't want to miss this window right here.
So Dino asked a really great question. Knowledge gap in how carriers see AI integration and what it actually is enormous. What procedures will you put in place to educate stakeholders instead of throwing out metrics, return on investment percentages, so on? Tactic knowledge is something that can not be pushed aside. So approach is a thin line between acceptance and rejection. And you touched on this a little bit, Mike, in what you were talking about before, but really, how do we get drivers and really the people who aren't sitting behind a desk running a trucking company, how do we get them to adapt to AI?
I think it's the biggest, I'll call it, risk to the whole business is the truckers traditionally have the image. I'm trying to think of any other industry that is thought of as backwards and as antiquated as trucking. I can't think of any. Maybe the funeral industry or something is not as glamorous, but the fact is there's still an awful lot of people out there in trucking doing things with notebook tablets or Excel spreadsheets and thinking the Excel spreadsheet makes them technologically ahead of the game. What we're really talking about is taking them to just keep that in mind. There are over 200,000 truck drivers out there that own their own truck, and they're called an owner operator, and they're an independent businessman with 1 or 2 trucks, a couple 100,000 of them. Imagine if we could give them the technology to handle customer service, handle backhauls, handle the pricing concerns. Are we taking a load or not? Think of it as a trip bag monitor to make sure that the whole trip makes sense, and do all this with the handheld and give them access to alternative loads when they've taken a trip. I think we will win them over. Now, that technology is not finalized yet. We've got to develop it, but nobody doubts that it's there. Nobody doubts that it can be done, but nobody's focused on doing it for the small guys, the onesie twos or owner operators. And I think that's one of the reasons we're not assuming we're getting a 90% market share, because if it was the kind of industry where they were tech savvy and weren't afraid of AI and did more technology things, we might be talking to you about a business that, has 300,000 customers in 5 years and is, tens of billions in revenue. we just assume that there's still going to be a lot of good old boys out there, and they're good people. They work hard, but they just are scared or they don't want it. But I may be wrong. When we get to this stage where we're doing everything handheld, we're making it AI driven. Remember, the agentic AI does the work, so it's cost effective, it's fast, it's real time, and it does work. I think, these are still some really solid people. People have some perception in their mind that a lot of drivers are the Billy Bobs of the world, and it's just not true. I've known thousands of drivers in my time, and some of them have master's degrees. It's a true story. A lot of them have college degrees. A good owner operator can make 400,000 or 500,000 of revenue a year, and he's trying to make 15% on that. So these are high paid people. There is a education level out there and an intelligent level that I don't think they get credit for. But there's no doubt that the technology resistance is higher in this industry than in a lot of other industries. But that's the reason we didn't go after a 50% market share goal. We went after a 0.1% as our base case. But at 1% model, remember, this is a company that's probably doing $100 million of free cash flow at a 1% market share. So I'd bet on that. I don't know how they stop us from that.
I know we are just past time. I'm sorry we didn't get through everyone's questions.
Well, let me just say this. We'll try to get to questions. If we had a lot more people show up for this webinar that frankly we were expecting, so that's a good thing. But we'll try to answer the questions in a one-on-one response. And we'll have more webinars. We're going to probably have one a week, I think, for the next month or two until we decide to stop the fundraising process altogether, at least on this round one preferred stuff. Excuse me, I've got a cough. But why don't we try to say that if we didn't get to your questions today, it was only because we weren't expecting that many people, but we still owe you an answer. And as this thing moves forward and there's an investment, we'll not only have the webinars to kind of get to the point where we maxed out, we don't want to do any more investors, we're doing that. We'll try to have something that's kind of a progress report at least once a month for everybody once we did lock in, and it'll be similar. So you'll have ongoing. This isn't something where we say, send us a check and we'll talk to you in 2 years. We'll try to build a process here where we can stay in touch if you're interested. And although the preferred stock and the first out money may disappear, there is still always the chance that we're doing an acquisition or we're doing something that needs additional capital. So I expect a webinar to be a norm in the future. That's all.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for joining us today. It's validating to see so many people join and ask some really great questions. The investment link is in the chat. We'll be sure to put the deck in the chat as well. But again, thank you so much for joining and for all your participation. I hope everyone has a great afternoon. Bye.